Police detained over 2,000 people and used force to break up rallies across Russia as tens of thousands of protesters demand the release of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Navalny had called on his supporters to protest after being arrested last weekend. He returned to Russia from Germany for the first time since being poisoned with a nerve agent he says was slipped to him by a state security agent in August. The authorities had warned people to stay away from Saturday's protests, saying they risk catching COVID-19 as well as prosecution and possible jail time for attending an unauthorized event. Leonid Volkov, a Navalny ally, called on them to do the same next weekend to try to free Navalny from what he called the clutches of his killers. In central Moscow, an estimated at least 40,000 people had gathered in one of the biggest unauthorized rallies for years. Police were seen roughly detaining people, bundling them into nearby vans. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says a delay in the supply of coronavirus vaccines from Pfizer and AstraZeneca is unacceptable. Both companies have warned they will not be able to deliver vaccines to the EU as agreed due to the production's issues. Mr. Conte has accused them of serious contract violations. A senior Italian health official has warned that the country will have to rethink its vaccination program if supply issues continue. The AstraZeneca vaccine, developed by Oxford University, has not yet been given EU approval. However, the bloc's drug regulator is expected to give it the green light at the end of this month. A spokesman for AstraZeneca said on Friday that initial volumes will be lower than originally anticipated without giving further details. The drug firm had been set to deliver about 80 million doses to the 27 nations by March. Last week, Pfizer announced it was slowing supplies to Europe to make manufacturing changes that will boost capacity. The EU has ordered 600 million doses from Pfizer. Google has threatened to remove its search engine from Australia over the nation's attempt to make the tech giant share royalties with news publishers. Australia is introducing a world-first law to make Google, Facebook and potentially other tech companies pay media outlets for their news content. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said lawmakers will not yield to threats. Australia is far from Google's largest market, but the proposed news code is seen as a possible global test case for how governments could seek to regulate big tech firms. Tech firms have faced increasing pressure to pay for news content in other countries, including France, where Google struck a landmark deal with media outlets on Thursday. In Australia, the proposed news code would tie Google and Facebook to mediate negotiations with publishers over the value of news content if no agreement could be reached first. But lawmakers challenged this, accusing Google of blackmail and bullying Australia for raising the reform. Mr. Morrison said his government remained committed to progressing the laws through Parliament this year. Larry King, the giant of US broadcasting who achieved worldwide fame for interviewing political leaders and celebrities, has died at the age of 87. King conducted an estimated 50,000 interviews in his 6-decade career, which included 25 years as host of the popular CNN talk show Larry King Live. Earlier this month, he was treated in hospital for COVID-19. The talk show host, famous for his braces and rolled-up sleeves, had faced several health problems in recent years, including heart attacks. King was married 8 times to 7 women and had 5 children. 2 of them died last year within weeks of each other. Daughter Chaya died from lung cancer and son Andy of a heart attack. Brazil's health regulatory agency Anvisa unanimously approved again on Friday the emergency use of another batch of coronavac vaccine against COVID-19. The request was made by Sao Paulo Institute on Monday, a day after Anvisa authorized the use of the first batch of 6 million doses of coronavac, which kicked off a countrywide COVID-19 vaccination process. The coronavac vaccine is developed by Chinese lab Sinovac in collaboration with the Butantan Institute of Sao Paulo. Brazil's health ministry plans to distribute a total of 8.7 million doses of the vaccine nationwide by January 31st. Anvisa said it considers a coronavac a safe, quality and effective vaccine, noting that its application in the first week of immunization has not presented any problems. All Brazilian states and the federal districts have started the vaccination process, with priority given to health professionals, indigenous people and seniors living in nursing homes. Meanwhile, an Emirates cargo plane on Friday landed in Rio de Janeiro, loaded with 2 million Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccines against COVID-19 a week later than scheduled. The vaccines will be escorted by local military police and directly sent to the Brazilian Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, the largest medical research center in Latin America. Iraq on Tuesday approved the emergency use of China's Sinopharm vaccines to contain the spread of COVID-19. The Iraqi Ministry of Health said in a brief statement that the Iraqi National Board for Selections of Drug (NBSD) approved the emergency use of the vaccine.
الخطوة الأولى هي إقرار العلاج أو اللقاح للاستخدام داخل العراق، وهذه الخطوة تمت من خلال الهيئة الوطنية لانتقاء الأدوية، وهي جهة علمية استشارية مستقلة قررت أنه هذا العلاج أو هذا اللقاح مطابق للمواصفات العلمية والعالمية المعتمدة في العراق.
Health Minister Hassan Al-Tamimi, who held a meeting in his office with the NBSD, said that the ministry was made all logistical preparations to receive the vaccines. The country had identified the groups that would take the vaccines, the ministry said in a separate statement. Previously, the NBSD already approved the emergency use of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to combat the epidemic. Muhammad Ismail, former director of the Baghdad Vaccine and Serum Institute, said the Chinese vaccine is safe, largely due to the production method.
اللقاح الصيني فيعتبر من اللقاحات الآمنة كونه يعتمد الطريقة التقليدية في الإنتاج وهي الفيروس المضاعف، عكس لقاحات شركات موديرنا وفايزر بايونتيك وأسترازينيكا أوكسفورد وسبوتنيك 10 الروسي التي تعتمد طريقة المسنجر RNA، وهي طريقة حديثة من المبكر جدا أن نتوقع ما سيحدث منها مستقبلا.
Hundreds of people marched in central Tunis against inequality and police brutality in defiance of a ban on demonstrations and as security forces tried to block off the city's main central avenue. Protesters chanted, "The people want the fall of the regime," a chant popularized during the so-called Arab Spring in 2011, and held up banners and slogans decrying the security response to more than a week of demonstration and nightly clashes between youth and police in cities across Tunisia. The protests, 10 years after a popular revolt against autocratic rule introduced democracy in Tunisia, represent the biggest bout of political unrest in several years, with police detaining hundreds of people. While the youths clashing with riot police after dark in poor districts of Tunisian cities have voiced few clear political aims, daytime protests have focused on the lack of jobs and on the police response to demonstrations. The COVID-19 pandemic has aggravated an already dire economy in Tunisia, where many young people seek only to immigrate to Europe and see few opportunities at home. The government banned protests last week in what it said was an attempt to reduce the spread of COVID-19.